Everybody hear that? Okay. The City Council Committee on Community and Economic Development, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, will meet in person on Thursday, January 11th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. for the purpose of discussing the meeting with the Planning Department and the CIU unit to discuss single-room occupancy, discuss a zoning overlay district relative to food trucks and temporary food vendors, and to discuss Haunted Happenings 2023 issues and debriefing. There was a link posted for additional information in the backup. This meeting will be held in City Council Chambers, 93 Washington Street, Salem, Mass. Is also available to join via remotely as long as technologically feasible. Link is posted in the agenda. Members of the committee all are here this evening, as well as every single member of the Committee of the Whole. So thank you all for great attendance kicking off the new year and new term. So, thank you all for joining and for being prompt. This was a bulky agenda item. I think it got some coverage, I think, because of that, because basically it was the 3 items that were rolled over from last year. So because we had 3 new counselors on the committee this year, I wanted to just have an introductory opening committee meeting. Because our next committee meeting will probably be a much larger one, depending on how things go this evening. We like to plan the Haunted Happenings recap meeting, which is hosted by this committee, and that will have a lot of larger audience attendance. So I wanted to kind of have a little smaller meeting so we can go over the other items that are in committee and see if we wish to hold meetings on them or kind of plan for the year going forward. So let me just pull up my notes on these items. So welcome, everyone. I do also want to note that for our committee meetings, hybrid is an option. So if you are attending remotely, just let me know. As Councilor Marcillo just alluded to in her OLA meeting, there's kind of a standing Thursday night meeting. Community and Economic Development doesn't have a standing meeting, so we just meet ad hoc as needed. So we'll be sending out emails of like, are you available this day or that day, especially for the one that's coming up. So we just appreciate any availability and attendance responses. And then if you do need to join remotely, which is a possibility, just let me know so we can provide you a link ahead of time. And then I'm looking forward to this year and this committee and the conversations that we're going to have. I'm very excited to chair this committee this year. I think there's a lot of opportunity and potential here for conversations. I do hope that our conversations in committee, it's not that I hope, I know our conversations in the committee will be respectful and open, and it's also a great time to have these conversations versus on the council floor. That's kind of the great part about committee meetings, is we can really get into depth conversations on a single topic and have open discourse with the public where it's not, timed. Also, often members or staff of the city come in, and we can really have a little more, it's still a respectful converse, but a little more relaxed conversation and back and forth questions and answers. Also, let me see. So with that, I'm going to get into the items that are currently in our committee to open up conversation on that. Because again, we have the 3 new members, so we wanted to go over the 3 items. Each item, since it was posted in our agenda this evening, we will need some sort of motion on our items that are here. We just went through that great training about motions and rules and all of that. So from committee, basically with committee, what you do is you just make a recommendation to the full council. So as a committee, we would vote on what our motion would be to recommend. So if it was an ordinance, we would recommend, for example, first passage. If it was or not first passage, if it was you always kind of want to do recommend in the positive, and if you don't agree with it, you would vote no. Or recommend, if it's an order in front of us, you would recommend adoption of the order. If you don't want to do anything, you can recommend discharge and with no action. Or if the conversation is going to continue, you can just move to keep something in committee. I also asked, speaking of, I know there have been some conversations that go on for a really long time or really meaty topics that we're not going to be able to cover everything in the meeting time. For example, this meeting is only 30 minutes tonight, and we have our full council meeting at 7, so we're definitely not going to be able to dive into all of the conversations. But say we had a full, 2-hour block, I will probably call for a motion after 2 hours to continue the topic and keep it in committee, because I think everybody's brains just kind of go kaput after 2 hours, and it's best for everybody's respectful of everybody's time and effectiveness for us to just move on and keep the matter in committee. So with that, any questions on or comments from the committee on those items? Okay, so we can jump into the agenda items that we have this evening. The first one was Meet with the planning department and CIU to discuss single room occupancy. So this was an order that was put in by Councillor Hapworth in February of 2023. Basically, which all of what I just said, Economic Committee co-posted with Committee of the Whole, which again is why everyone is here this evening versus just our committee. When we were writing the agenda, we realized we had to have that. I was just going to have a CED meeting. So with all of that, and the Committee of the Whole, which means that other councillors can join in on the meeting, and the Planning Department and the Community Impact Unit to discuss single room occupancy. So this was put in February 2023. I don't believe we met on this last year. I did reach out to the Planning Department after it was mentioned by the mayor in his State of the City address at inauguration. He mentioned single room occupancy as one of his priorities for this coming year. And he said it was going to be handled in-house. So I reached out to the planning department, Elena, who provided Elena and Amanda in the planning department, and they provided some information and background on the work that they will be doing on single room occupancy. So with that, I'm going to ask if everybody was able to view that letter from Elena that was put in the SharePoint site. If that link worked. So in the agenda, there was a link provided for backup information that had a letter from Elena. I thought I had it printed. One second. And it was Elena from the planning department describing their plan for how the internal departments will be working for the single room occupancy item in 2024. I can summarize it. So in summary, and they also talked about this at the Affordable Housing Trust Fund meeting last night. I'm not sure if anybody joined that as well. But in summary, single room occupancy or board or rooming houses, so they're kind of called different terminology, are residential properties which contain multiple single room dwelling units which are intended for occupancy by a single individual. They may have shared kitchen and bathroom facilities. They can be operated as transitional units or permanent housing. SROs are considered naturally occurring affordable housing, or NOAAs, given their limited size. They provide housing opportunities for people of limited economic means, including young people, older adults, and formerly homeless individuals. The letter then dives into more information about SROs, what our current zoning and ordinance allow and don't allow, data around it. As current, they see this, or the city sees this as a staff versus consultant-led effort. It will require considerable collaboration between planning, health, police, and building departments, as well as the Council on Aging and the Neighborhood Stability Coordinator. So they expect to host community conversations on the concept, potentially including individuals with interviews and focus groups, and current SRO landlords, tenants, and people who may be interested in SRO as a housing option. So I included that in there because that's a lot that the city is going to be working on this year. It's not something that the committee is going to be working on. Well, I mean, I'm not personally working on it. I know the city is working on it. So I put that in there for the information that it is something that's being worked on. It's a priority. It was discussed in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund last night, as that is going to be a great, or a point for the public conversation. So I put that in there for background to see what the Committee of Economic Development would be expected to do with this matter, or if we wanted to keep it in committee or continue the conversation elsewhere. With that, I'll open it up to the floor for the committee. So because we have this matter in front of us, we do need some sort of motion. We could either move to keep it in committee, we could move to discharge it. Councilor?
Thank you, Chair Stott. I'd like to move to discharge this matter.
Councilor Varela moves to discharge this matter. I'll second that. Under discussion, any questions or discussion from the committee? Questions? Any questions from the Committee of the Whole or discussion on that? Councilor Cohen?
Thank you, Chair Stott. I'm just really excited for this to come back to the council after the city does its diligence. We really have a deficiency of smaller units, and we have a lot of people in our community that are really don't have a place to go. So I think the city will do its diligence, and I can't wait for it to come back.
Agreed. Also excited to see the conversations and the work that is about to happen on this order. Any further comments, questions? Okay, so since we're all in person, we can just do a hand vote. All of those in favor of discharging the matter from committee with no action? Any opposed? Matter is discharged. So that was weak. The next item that we have on the agenda is creating an overlay district relative to food trucks and temporary food vendors. So that matter was brought in by Councilor Varela last year, who is on our committee this year. So I think that that's all it said. So this was also co-posted with Community of the Whole, meet to create the discussion of a zoning overlay relative to food trucks and temporary food vendors in the city of Salem. I also tried to do some background work on this. I spoke with Councilor Varela and the mayor as well to see if this had any movement. There were kind of some different thoughts of how to do best progress, but we weren't quite exactly sure as to what the matter was going to be yet. So, Councilor Varela?
Thank you, Chair Stott. So yes, after discussing this, things have changed since our last discussion when it comes to this matter. At this time, it seems that we want to take a different approach to this after talking to the mayor's office. And I think it would be appropriate to discharge this matter and reference this conversation in a different format, only because the way we do things now, I think that having possibly the opportunity to have an RFP process with people coming in to be temporary food service vendors would be a better way to control the use of vendors on our streets. But we still want to figure out a way to codify this in ordinance, only because anyone engaging in the act of a temporary food service vendor is going to want to see some continuity and some permanence to the matter. So again, if it's policy, that's great, but I think there should be some ordinance in place to make sure that this use will continue on for years to come. No business is going to commit to this if it's not in permanence, because there's just too much infrastructure involved in engaging with this. So with that, discharging it, the conversation is still ongoing with the mayor's office, which I'm working with Ms. Renard, our city solicitor, as far as language and how we address this. So I'm looking forward to coming back with a different perspective on how to address this matter. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? From the Committee of the Whole? So you moved to discharge it. Was there a second? Seconded by Councilor by Davis. Okay, I don't know if it was Councilor Davis. Any further comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor of discharging this matter from committee? Any opposed? Matter is discharged. And we will go on to the third and final item, which is, so the background on this one was actually originally a council order from 2022, and we kept the matter in 2022. I'm going to read the original order from 2022 that the Community and Economic Development Committee co-posted with Committee of the Whole, meet to hold a Haunted Happenings 2022 debriefing conversation with the goal of hearing data on visitors, revenue, and expenses, as well as collecting feedback from organizers, programmers, and operational personnel of the 2022 Halloween season. The meeting shall be held at the Mayor Jean Levesque Community Life Center at 401 Bridge Street to allow for a roundtable discussion with community planning partners and city staff, including inviting representatives from Destination Salem, Salem Chamber of Commerce, Salem Main Streets, the Creative Collective, and the MBTA. The mayor, chief of police, DPS, Park and Rec, finance, legal, health agent, board of health, and fire chief are all encouraged to send a representative to attend with information on the city's performance for the Halloween season. I did not realize the attendee list was that big. That was the original order, but it did say the specific year. It said a debrief of 2022. So then last fall, Councilor Watson-Phillip put in an order that council order 658 of 2022, which remains in the committee, relative to the Haunted Happenings debrief for 2022 be updated to reflect the year of 2023 and that the invitees remain the same and the location remains at the Community Life Center. So that is the item that is left in committee. I do hope that it stays in committee because I think I've already received about 10 emails asking me when this meeting will take place. So we're definitely, I think it was a very successful meeting last year held by Councillor Hopworth of attendees, of some really good solid feedback. They are definitely, it's a big topic. We try to kind of narrow in on pieces that, revenue, expenses, public safety. We hit on some pieces at our meeting over the weekend with the retreat that I think will probably come up as topics as well. So I think it will be another robust, great meeting within the city. Councillor Varela.
Thank you, Chair Stott. Like-minded, I really think this conversation is something we should have every year. There's always ways we can improve and communicate how we can make Halloween not only safer, but more efficient and work for the residents as well. So I would also like to see this matter remain in committee and am looking forward to the discussion when it does happen.
Is that a motion? Did you?
Yes, that is a motion to remain in committee. Thank you.
I'll second that. Any further conversation, questions from the committee or committee of the whole? No? Okay. All those in favor that the matter remain in committee? Any opposed? The matter will remain in committee. So I will say there are some attendees here in the room and attendees on Zoom. I will open up our committee meeting to public comment. It is kind of a general public comment that we have related to the agenda items for committee meetings. So I don't want to not have the public comment period, even though we just discussed our 3 matters fairly quickly. And we'll continue the conversations on them as we discussed. But if anyone is joining us in council chambers, you can make your way to the podium to speak. Or if you're joining us via Zoom, you can use the raise hand function and I will allow you to speak. While we're waiting for that, I will note the background information. I generally try to provide that, especially with the Haunted Happenings meeting, since that's going to be our next meeting. That is also in that shared drive that I linked to. So it has the presentation from last year, which will give you an idea of what we're going to talk about this year. It has a recording of the meeting last year, minutes. But then just in general, there's other information on there. So if anybody has any issues on accessing that, let me know. I can definitely help because I think it makes a huge difference when you come to the meeting prepared with the background information and knowledge available. All right. So I don't see any hands raised on Zoom. So if you're here for public comment, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Dave Pizzeni, Salem, Mass. Thomas. Can we also make sure that we include in these meetings how
haunted happenings can benefit the residents rather than some of the policies that have been instituted that actually take advantage of them? We need to start representing Salem. That is the first
responsibility
of this august body. This entire building and everyone who works here. Salem for Salem. We seem to be benefiting more everyone who doesn't live here. Developers, businesses. Salem pretty much is a moneymaker. That's the resource. Salem itself, because the world comes here. Not just states, the world comes to Salem. Salem itself is a resource in and of itself, just by existing. The world comes here. Yet we continue in the city to make policies that aren't benefiting the people who come here and pay the taxes, who go out of their way to improve their community. And people come from all different places, all different walks of life. And that doesn't matter. It's the fact that they come here and they try to make a better life for themselves and their families. And again, a lot of the decisions made here are benefiting people who don't live here. Plain and simple. Even as a citizen, I work for Salem because I live here. My taxes, my effort, everything I do should not just benefit myself, but benefit my community. And your very job descriptions say you work for us. You work for Salem. not the organizations that just want to come here and benefit off of our resource. Salem is the resource. So that needs to be part of that discussion. That plain and simple, it needs to be all about Salem first in this room. No more benefiting the outsiders. They want to come to Salem, be a part of our community, live here, go to school here, do everything. Great. Again, don't care where you come from, how you come. It's the fact that you're here and contributing is what's important. And that needs to be a part of these discussions, especially haunted happenings, because that is one of our greatest resources here in the city, just by our existence, because the world comes here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom? I don't see any raised hands on Zoom, so I will ask for another motion. Councilor Varela.
Thank you, Chair Stott. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Councilor Varela moves to adjourn. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Harvey. All those in favor to adjourn? We are adjourned. Thank you.